The heavy silence in Buckingham Palace's grand drawing-room was palpable, as the royal family gathered to witness a moment that would forever alter the course of their lives. Princess Anne stood at the center, a sense of gravitas in her demeanor as she held the sealed envelope containing her mother's final wishes. The death of Queen Elizabeth II had left an undeniable void in the monarchy, and the world watched with bated breath, waiting to see how the royal family would navigate this uncharted territory. The will, a document of immense importance, would not only divide assets, but also carry the weight of the Queen's vision for the future of the monarchy. It would test the unity of the family, challenge their traditions, and perhaps even rewrite the rules that had governed them for centuries. As Anne slowly broke the seal on the envelope, there was a rare moment of vulnerability that flickered across her usually composed face. For those who had long admired the Princess Royal for her no-nonsense demeanor, this was a rare and revealing moment. Anne had always been the steady hand in a turbulent royal family, but even she could not escape the emotional weight of what was about to unfold. Her voice, calm yet slightly trembling, began to read aloud the words her mother had left behind. The first section of the will was a deeply personal message from the Queen herself. As Anne read the heartfelt words, her voice wavered ever so slightly, betraying the depth of emotion behind them. Queen Elizabeth had written of her gratitude for the years of service and dedication shown by her family, her reflections on her long reign, and a final, poignant plea for unity as the monarchy moved into the future. The message, while filled with love, carried with it an unmistakable sense of urgency. The Queen had long known that the monarchy would need to evolve to survive, and her final wishes reflected that knowledge. The room fell silent as Anne finished reading the opening words. The weight of the Queen's final reflections hung in the air, and it seemed as though time itself had paused. But as the will shifted from general reflections to specific bequests, the atmosphere in the room changed. The royal family had long been accustomed to their mother's carefully considered decisions, but even they could not have predicted the choices she had made in her final testament. The Queen's decision regarding Windsor Castle was no surprise. The iconic estate, which had been the home of the British monarchy for generations, would remain under the stewardship of the reigning monarch. It was a decision that honored the continuity of the royal family, a symbol of the enduring legacy of the crown. But as Anne turned the page, the next decision caused a ripple of surprise throughout the room. Balmoral Castle, the Queen's beloved Scottish retreat, where she had spent countless moments of reflection and cherished time with her family, would not follow the expected path. Instead of being passed down to the reigning monarch as many had assumed, it would be shared among several family members. The Queen's wish was clear: her cherished memories at Balmoral were to be preserved, but in a way that allowed her children and grandchildren to create their own connections to the property. The decision, while thoughtful, raised immediate concerns. Quiet murmurs rippled through the room as the family members considered the implications of shared ownership. Would it lead to friction among them? Would it create divisions that could fracture the royal unity the Queen had so carefully nurtured? But it was the next bequest that truly stunned the room. Sandringham, the private estate that had traditionally been held by the reigning monarch, was to be bequeathed to Princess Anne. The room fell into stunned silence as Anne read the words aloud. This was an unexpected move, and the implications were immediate. Sandringham, a property that had long been associated with the monarch, was now being passed on to Anne, the Queen's only daughter. For Anne, the decision was deeply personal. She had spent many cherished moments at Sandringham with her mother, and it was clear that the Queen had wanted to honor that bond. Yet, the bequest was not without its controversy. King Charles, who had long been seen as the heir to the throne, was visibly tense. His expression tightened, and his jaw clenched as he processed the decision. The weight of the moment seemed to press down on him. This was not just a matter of property, it was a symbolic gesture that could have far-reaching consequences for the royal family. Prince Andrew, seated beside him, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The unease in the room was palpable, as the family members tried to process the significance of the Queen's decision. For some, it was a move that made perfect sense, a reflection of Anne's deep connection to the estate. For others, it was a decision that would undoubtedly stir tensions within the family. As Anne continued to read the will, the focus shifted to the Queen's priceless jewelry collection. These were not just mere trinkets. They were symbols of the monarchy's rich history, each piece telling a story of tradition, power, and legacy. The Queen's most iconic piece, the Vladimir tiara, was bequeathed to Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge. This gesture was a clear signal of Catherine's future role as Queen Consort, and a sign that the Queen had recognized her place in the future of the monarchy. It was a passing of the torch, a recognition that Catherine was not just the wife of the future king, but a vital part of the monarchy's future. Other pieces of the Queen's jewelry, rich with history and sentiment, were passed down to Princess Charlotte, the Queen's great-granddaughter. The decision ensured that the Queen's legacy would endure through the next generation, and that the royal family's rich heritage would continue to be passed down, piece by piece, from one generation to the next. But the surprises did not end there. As Anne read on, a bequest for Prince Harry was revealed. The Duke of Sussex, whose controversial departure from royal duties had caused a rift in the family, was given a ceremonial sword once owned by King George VI. The gesture was a clear attempt to acknowledge Harry's military service and his lasting connection to the royal family, despite the strained relationships that had developed in recent years. The bequest was a symbolic move, an olive branch extended in the hope of healing old wounds. Whether it would achieve that goal was unclear, but the Queen's decision to include Harry in her final wishes was a powerful statement about family and reconciliation. The reading of the will continued, but it was clear that the decisions made by the Queen were not just about dividing assets. They were about shaping the future of the monarchy, guiding it through the changing tides of history. The will outlined a vision for the future, one that would require the royal family to adapt to the evolving world around them. The monarchy's future would be shaped by these decisions, and the balance between tradition and progress would be delicate and fraught with challenges. As Anne finished reading the will, the room fell into a heavy silence. The magnitude of the Queen's final wishes had settled in, and the royal family was left to ponder the road ahead. Outside Buckingham Palace, the public waited eagerly for news of the Queen's will, speculating on the contents and the potential ramifications. But within the walls of the palace, the true impact of the Queen's words was only just beginning to unfold. Princess Anne, ever the pragmatist, was asked by a reporter about her memories of a particular conversation she had with her mother regarding the royal marriage rules. The question referenced a long-standing tradition that required royal family members to seek the monarch's approval before marrying. It was a rule set in place by an Act of Parliament in 1772, which stated that no descendant of King George II could marry without the reigning monarch's consent. This rule had applied to Anne ahead of her marriage to Mark Phillips in 1973, and she had been asked how it felt to seek her mother's permission before marrying. With her trademark wit, Anne responded without missing a beat, not half as difficult as asking permission to get divorced. Her quick humor was a reminder of the resilience and strength that ran through the royal family, even in the face of difficult decisions. As Anne carefully folded the papers and placed them back in the envelope, the room remained silent. The true significance of the Queen's final wishes was still sinking in, and the family members knew that they were standing at the precipice of a new era. The monarchy had been irrevocably changed, and its future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Queen Elizabeth II's legacy would endure, carried forward by the decisions she had made in her final testament. The royal family, despite their differences, would have to come together to honor her wishes and preserve the monarchy for future generations. Outside Buckingham Palace, the world awaited news of the Queen's will. The royal family's private moment had now become a public spectacle, and the world was eager to see how the monarchy would move forward. But within the palace walls, the real work had just begun. The Queen's final wishes had set the course for the future, and the royal family would need to navigate the complexities of her decisions in the years to come.